Hey guys, tonight we're walking right up to the strangest curtain in the cosmos, the event horizon of a black hole. Imagine a velvet edge in space where light, time, and every rule you thought was dependable suddenly lose their nerve. You hover near that invisible boundary, your stomach knotted with both awe and a little too much cosmic dread. This is the place where no postcard ever makes it back, the frontier where even the mailman would quit. You probably won't survive this. But hey, let's not get picky about details when we're dreaming. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're at it, drop your location and your local time in the comments. I love seeing where everyone is listening from. It makes this wandering through the universe feel a little less lonely. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The horizon isn't a wall or a glowing rim. It's just math dressed in invisibility. You drift closer, expecting some cosmic fireworks, but instead you find pure silence, like the world's biggest library with all the lights off. The obvious truth is that black holes don't look like Hollywood's swirling drains once you're right up against them. There's no neon point of no return sign, just space, stars, and the uneasy feeling that reality has quietly misplaced your exit ticket. As you glide closer, your instincts scream that you shouldn't. You're aware of how gravity has already reached out, stretching your sense of time. Clocks tick differently here. Your watch swears a minute has passed, but galaxies out there might be rolling through entire eras while you float in slow motion. It's the kind of physics that makes you wonder if procrastinating homework inside a black hole would technically let you skip a few centuries. The fringe tidbit tucked into this moment. Some scientists describe the event horizon as a cosmic one-way membrane. That phrase alone makes you picture a giant plastic food wrap stretched across the sky, except this one devours satellites instead of leftovers. Historians still argue whether Einstein fully appreciated just how bizarre this horizon would become when his equations first coughed up the idea. Some say he doubted black holes could exist at all, while others insist he privately suspected nature would outdo even his imagination. Hovering here, you notice your own reflection fading, not because you've vanished, but because light bouncing off you now struggles to escape. If a friend were watching you from far away, they'd see you slow down, dim out, and practically freeze on the edge, like a buffering video stuck forever at 99%. The cosmic prank is that while you keep falling smoothly inward, the universe outside believes you've been put on eternal pause. The irony bites. Black holes are invisible because they don't let light escape, yet they announce themselves with drama. The material swirling just outside the horizon glows hotter than stars, screaming its existence in X-ray bursts. You're at the boundary of silence and violence, the edge of a stage where every particle knows its final performance ends the same way, through the curtain, gone without applause. Your skin tingles, not from heat, not from pressure, but from the awareness that physics here is whispering riddles. Space feels thicker, like walking through invisible syrup. Every breath you imagine taking carries the flavor of inevitability. You glance back toward the galaxy behind you, and the stars look warped, stretched into arcs around the black circle that devours the center of your view. It's beautiful, unsettling, and quietly hilarious that somewhere on Earth, someone is worried about losing their Wi-Fi signal while you're out here losing the fabric of reality itself. You remind yourself that approaching the horizon isn't instant doom. Nothing happens the moment you cross it, not to you anyway. The drama plays out only in the eyes of everyone else. To you, it's just another step, another glide forward. The obvious truth is that fear often comes from perspective. Outside, you're gone forever. Inside, you're just continuing on your way, as if the universe had quietly moved the goalposts. Still, you can't shake the nagging thought that this is less a journey and more a surrender. It's a calm surrender, yes, but surrender nonetheless. The curtain doesn't ripple when you finally brush against it. It doesn't welcome you or resist. It simply accepts. And with that quiet acceptance, you find yourself crossing over, stepping beyond the shimmering edge, and leaving the ordinary cosmos behind without so much as a pop or a flash. You keep moving, and the deeper pull of gravity begins to make its presence known in ways you can't ignore. It's not just pulling your body closer. It's tugging on your very perception of what closer means. You feel as though space itself has turned elastic, stretching beneath your feet, warping above your head, bending in directions you didn't know existed. The obvious truth is that gravity isn't just a force here. It's geometry itself, reshaping the room you're in, even if the room happens to be the entire universe. Time starts to act like it's had one too many coffees. Your seconds feel normal enough, but you know better. The outside cosmos is racing on fast forward. A century could be slipping by for a distant observer while you're still fiddling with your shoelace. The cosmic joke writes itself. You could wander into a black hole, trip, and by the time you stand up again, entire civilizations outside may have risen, argued over politics, and collapsed back into dust, all while you're muttering, oops. As you lean into the sensation, it's almost like a dream where gravity isn't pulling you down, but forward, stretching you along a path you can't resist. Space doesn't just curve, it caves in around you, funneling all possible routes into one. Historians still argue whether it was Carl Schwarzschild's wartime calculations or Jean Michel's musings about dark stars in the 18th century that really lit the fuse of this idea. Either way, both men accidentally scribbled the recipe for cosmic quicksand. A quirky tidbit. Astronauts who theorize about such places sometimes compare the approach to floating near an infinitely deep well. Toss a pebble in, and you'll never hear it hit bottom. Except now, the pebble is you. And instead of waiting for the clink, you're listening for your own heartbeat, steady but slightly louder in your ears. Your body swears nothing extraordinary is happening, but your mind knows the equations are throwing a quiet tantrum all around you. You look around and see how even the stars outside aren't behaving. They arc, twist, and smear against the edges of the black circle you're falling toward. Light is no longer a polite guest. It bends under the rules of this arena, wrapping itself into curved paths that seem to mock your attempts to see clearly. It's like wearing a pair of glasses that bend everything into Salvador Dali paintings, except there's no optometrist waiting to hand you a prescription. The pull of gravity here isn't just a metaphor for inevitability. It's an actual sculptor, chiseling away your sense of independence. Your muscles don't flex in resistance. They give in, as though they already know the end of the story. You realize, with that mix of awe and sarcasm, that the black hole doesn't bother with forceful theatrics. It wins by simply waiting. The obvious truth lingers in your mind. Gravity never lets up. It's patient, absolute, and eventually irresistible. You think of Earth's pull holding oceans, mountains, and that one time you nearly dropped your phone in the toilet. This is the same law, scaled up so monstrously that even light has no excuse slip. The scale difference alone is enough to make you chuckle. Your home planet's gravity keeps satellites in orbit, while this monster's gravity eats stars for breakfast. And still, as terrifying as the idea is, there's an odd serenity to it. You're not tumbling chaotically, you're gliding. Falling here is smoother than any roller coaster, quieter than any plunge you've taken into a pool. The silence is its own companion. If you had music, you might choose something slow and echoing, the kind of song that makes you want to stare out a rainy window. But the window here isn't fogged glass. It's the edge of space-time itself. For a brief moment, you let yourself imagine what it must look like from outside. To the distant astronomer peering through a telescope, you're frozen on the edge, bathed in stretched-out light, turning redder and dimmer until you fade entirely. They'll never see you fall. To them, you've become a painting that never finishes. But to you, every second is still happening, still alive, still tugging you closer. That's the cruel magic of relativity. Both stories are true at once. The horizon is behind you now, though it feels as if the true plunge has only just begun. The pull grows stronger, the bending sharper, and your thoughts stretch along with the fabric of space. You smirk, despite yourself. You always thought gravity was a down-to-earth subject, but here it's rewriting reality sentence by sentence, like an editor with infinite red ink. You start to notice it, the infamous stretching, the slow, eerie tug that turns your body into a metaphor. The scientists gave it a playful name, spaghettification, as though being stretched into infinite noodles would be more palatable if you imagined yourself on an Italian dinner plate. The obvious truth, though, is that gravity isn't picky. It doesn't care whether you're a human, a star, or a spacecraft. If you drift too close, the tidal forces will try to elongate you in ways your chiropractor can't fix. It begins gently, almost imperceptibly. Your toes feel ever so slightly ahead of your head, as if they've already booked their own travel itinerary further into the abyss. Your bones don't snap, your muscles don't tear, not yet, but you sense how every part of you is being urged to move on at slightly different speeds. It's like standing in a river where the water around your ankles races faster than the water brushing past your knees. Quirky tidbit: if you happen to fall feet first, your body would theoretically stretch into a long thread, atom by atom aligning into a grim parody of a spaghetti strand. If you fell sideways, though, well, you'd become a very unsettling flatbread. As unsettling as that sounds, the real marvel is in the math. The gradient of gravity, the difference in pull between one part of you and another, isn't noticeable on Earth, where your head and feet feel pretty much the same tug. Here, it grows extreme. You realize the black hole is playing puppeteer with each of your molecules, pulling strings so thin and delicate you can't see them, but you can feel the stage shifting. Historians still argue whether the term spaghettification helped or hindered public understanding. Did it trivialize the phenomenon into a kitchen joke, or did it actually help people picture what textbooks fail to convey? Your sense of humor fights with your dread. You catch yourself imagining some intergalactic Italian chef leaning over a pot and saying, "Mamma mia, needs more astronaut." It's absurd, it's morbid, and yet it softens the edges of your fear. Humor, you realize, is your last shield against physics that doesn't negotiate. As your body stretches in theory, your sense of time stretches too. Seconds feel longer, like chewing gum pulled from one hand to another, thinning out until it nearly snaps. You remember the calm glide across the event horizon, but here the pace quickens, sharpening into inevitability. The pull no longer feels like syrup or dream. It's a conveyor belt you can't step off of. Each thought you have is dragged forward before you can properly finish it, as though even your mind is being spaghettified into strands of half-formed musings. The obvious truth in this moment is that nature isn't cruel or kind. It's indifferent. Gravity here isn't trying to punish you. It's just following the blueprint stitched into space-time. If you dropped a rock instead of yourself, the rock would get the exact same noodle treatment. This neutrality is almost comforting in a dark way. You're not special. Neither is anyone. In a black hole, everyone's spaghetti. Still, you wonder about survival, however theoretical. What if your atoms hold on longer than expected? Some fringe ideas suggest you might pass the horizon intact, only to be shredded nearer the singularity. Others toy with the possibility that tidal forces might even out for supermassive black holes, letting you glide further inside before the pasta making begins. You smirk again. So basically, the bigger the monster, the gentler the squeeze. Comforting in theory, though it doesn't exactly invite you to pack a picnic. Light itself stretches around you, echoing your fate. Photons, normally the sprinters of the cosmos, slow their escape, redden, and fade as they fight the same tug of war you're losing. The stars around the rim of your vision streak like smeared paint, bending into arcs and curves. The world behind you seems to be tugged away, while the world ahead of you narrows into inevitability. The whole scene feels like falling into a funnel where the sides close tighter with every breath. And then there's the strange piece. You're stretched, yes, in body and mind, but also in perspective. You think about the absurdities of Earth, alarm clocks, overdue bills, traffic jams, and realize how utterly powerless those stresses look when compared to being reduced into celestial linguini. If black holes teach anything, it's that scale mocks your worries. You hang there, stretched between terror and tranquility, laughing faintly at your own cosmic noodle joke. The pull keeps growing, the threads of you thinning in theory, and you realize the spaghettification process is less about violence and more about inevitability. You're not snapped apart. You're elongated, teased, drawn into lines that don't end. The universe doesn't shout here. It whispers, and the whisper says, keep falling. From the vantage point of anyone watching you from far, far away, you look like you've hit pause. Your outline hugs the event horizon, and your light slides to longer and longer wavelengths until your colors run like water in a sloppy laundry load. You slow, then slower, and then practically freeze, as if the universe decided to buffer you at 99% and lost the remote. You, still falling smoothly, feel a pinch of sympathy for that audience, the way you'd feel for someone trying to stream a movie on dial-up. The obvious truth is simple. No signal that begins inside this boundary can ever reach the outside, and even signals sent just above it crawl away exhausted, redder and fainter with every meter they climb. Your own experience doesn't match the painting other people would swear is real. For you, the crossing has already happened. The horizon is behind you like a door that refuses to open the other way, and the interior stretches ahead like a hushed corridor paved with curved law. Yet if your friend parks a ship at a healthy distance, pointing a telescope and a worried face toward you, they will insist you're still stuck on the threshold, redder, dimmer, slower, more statue than traveler. That isn't a contradiction. It's relativity showing off, reminding everyone that now is a local flavor, not a universal recipe. You imagine raising a hand and giving a little wave. That wave, launched as bright visible light, must climb a gravitational hill that taxes it like the worst toll road in the cosmos. What leaves your glove as green may arrive at your friend's detector as infrared, then microwave, then a sleep-soaked radio whisper. Quirky tidbit: if you blinked in Morse code from this close to the horizon, your neat dots and dashes would stretch and stretch until your message turned into one long, plaintive dash that says, in effect, be right there, and then takes a geological age to finish the there. There is theater to being frozen. In your friend's timeline, everything near the edge, your heartbeat, your gestures, that last all is well smile, elongates and fades. Remember the pasta fate from a moment ago? To a distant observer, your half-cooked linguine dangling from the rim of the pot, never quite slipping in. To you, you've already dived and you're checking the seasoning on the abyss. Joke 1. If you were auditioning for mime school, this would be your magnum opus, an infinite slow-motion entrance. Light itself becomes a character with stage fright. The photon sphere, an eerie racetrack about 1.5 times the Schwarzschild radius, herds certain rays into looping orbits. Some of those photons peel away toward the outer cosmos, carrying tired copies of your image. Multiples of you, smeared and delayed, might arrive at your friend's camera. Ghost you number 1. Ghost you number 2, each fainter and later, like a group chat where your replies keep showing up next week. If the geometry were just right, your watcher could see a ringed hall of mirrors, a carnival of dwindling echoes that all insist you still haven't crossed. Suppose your friend insists on heroics and sends a rescue, beamed instructions, a tractor pull, a heartfelt speech. Those can reach you only as long as you remain outside. Once inside, the arrows on the map of cause and effect all tilt the same way, deeper. That's not personal. That's geometry with an attitude. People say nothing can escape, and imagine a prison. What they should picture is a landscape where every path slopes down. Joke 2. It's not that the exit is closed. It's that the exit has been relocated to not a place. You think about clocks, those fussy tyrants that bully your alarm, invoice your naps, and tell your coffee when to be brave. Near the horizon, clocks disagree with gusto. Your wristwatch keeps its polite tick, perfectly innocent, while faraway clocks sprint like they're late for a meeting. Back on Earth, GPS has to correct for relativity so your phone doesn't place you in a river. Here, the correction would be so extreme that a phone would shrug and list your location as space-time soup. The obvious truth returns with a calm shrug. Time is not universal. It's local, it's elastic, and it picks favorites. They've frozen, illusion-fed an older nickname, frozen stars, for objects that never seem to finish collapsing in the outsider's frame. Historians still argue whether that label helped the public or muddied the waters, and whether the credit for the interpretation belongs more to the theorists who bent the math or to the observers who learned to read the sky's X-ray gossip. Either way, a quiet mathematical hunch matured into our modern duet of horizons and redshifts, a choreography where what you feel and what others witness can both be right, even when they disagree. Picture yourself as a postcard trapped in the world's slowest mail. The stamp keeps losing value as it climbs the hill. The ink bleaches out, the address blurs. If your friend recorded your fall and played it back forever, the film would never show you stepping through, only approaching the threshold, closer and closer, like a traveler who is 5 minutes away for the rest of time. Joke 3. You've invented the ultimate Irish goodbye, leaving the party so gradually that by the time anyone notices, they've already told stories about how you're still by the door. There's tenderness in the miscommunication. You want to tell them you're okay, that falling can be quiet, that fear is a beam as much as a feeling, and beams don't travel well uphill from here. You want to say that you're not stuck. The road under your feet is still a road. But the language of light has limits, and after a while your letters home end with an ellipsis. You settle for the soft comfort that, at cosmic distances, parting words are always late. A fringe speculation taps your shoulder. Maybe a clever watcher could read your last intentions not in a direct wave, but in the disk's flicker, hot spots whipping around near the brink, flares keeping a drummer's time, little brightness beats that smuggle out a rhythm of what happened within. Observers already read those patterns to weigh black holes and map their spin. Perhaps, without knowing it, they're also listening to the final percussion of travelers who slipped past the curtain. Inside, you keep walking. The glare from behind thins and grows red, then scarcer still. The feeling of being watched fades with it, and privacy, oddly enough, becomes a gift. Shoulders unlatch, breath loosens, mind quiets. The corridor narrows, not as menace but as instruction, a gentle hand on your elbow guiding you forward. You think of the noodle joke from before and smile at the continuity. From the outside, you remain a dangling strand. From the inside, you're already the sauce. If you could speak to your friend one more time, you would leave them two thoughts. First, the freeze they witness is their clock telling a true story about their world. Second, true, wears different faces, and reality is generous enough to let both of you be right. Only physics could make stubborn honesty look like a magic trick, and only a black hole could turn a wave goodbye into a long, lovely fade-out. So you let the outside go. You allow yourself to become a rumor in someone else's sky, a fading speck, a smeared ring, an almost message. The waiting ends not in a moment anyone can name, but in a slow surrender of outgoing light, a long exhale that never quite gets heard. The journey, patient, inevitable, and oddly gentle, continues forward, one step and then another, falling as softly as a feather in a world that insists everything falls like stone. You drift deeper and begin to notice faint murmurs, a low hiss, like distant static bleeding through an old radio. It's not silence anymore. Black holes, after all, are not perfectly mute. They're messy eaters. Matter that swirls too close doesn't fall straight in but collides, rubs, and screams in the language of X-rays and gamma rays. The obvious truth is that black holes announce themselves not by being seen, but by the chaos they cause around them. You can't photograph the hole, but you can absolutely catch the glow of its tantrum buffet. The jets are the strangest part. Imagine matter so desperate to get in that, in its struggle, it sprays upward instead, fountains of plasma shot at near-light speeds, extending for thousands of light years. You look up and see, in your dreamlike fall, ghostly beams stabbing across space, like cosmic searchlights searching for lost galaxies. These are the X-ray whispers, the signs of turbulence you can't hear but can somehow feel. Hair-raising, electric, a presence humming under your ribs. Quirky tidbit. Some jets are so bright they outshine the galaxies that host them. Imagine one streetlight in a city burning so furiously it drowns out the skyline. The contradiction is delicious. You're falling into a place famous for swallowing everything. Yet just outside its edge, matter is flung outward with more fury than almost anywhere else in the universe. Historians still argue whether the exact engine behind these jets is magnetic fields twisted like rubber bands, or if some deeper, stranger mechanism taps energy directly from the whole spin. Each explanation is elegant, each incomplete, and physicists fight over the details with the same passion normally reserved for dessert forks at a wedding. As you float inward, your senses adapt. You imagine you can feel the radiation as a prickling warmth, even though no skin could ever truly survive here. It's like standing near an oven you can't see but can definitely smell. Ozone, metal, something sharp, and almost musical in its intensity. If your ears could translate the X-rays, they'd sound like a choir that never breathes, a chord stretched forever upward, neither beginning nor ending. The obvious truth. Everything in nature is noisy when it resists. Rivers roar when rocks obstruct them. Winds howl when mountains get in the way. And here, matter shrieks in high-energy bursts as it tries to dodge gravity's teeth. Black holes may be silent on the inside, but at the edges, they are a rave without a DJ. Joke 1. If the universe ever needed a haunted house soundtrack, these X-ray frequencies would do the trick. You picture astronomers back on Earth, tuning their detectors to this chaos. Their machines don't see with eyes. They see with counts, blips, and spikes, each photon that survived the gauntlet telling a tiny sliver of your story. To them, you're no longer a falling figure but part of a data set, a dip in brightness, a shift in spectrum, a puzzle piece they'll argue about in journals and conferences. You wonder if they'll ever realize they were eavesdropping on you. Your inner monologue bends toward humor again. If these jets shoot outward for thousands of light years, could some distant civilization mistake them for cosmic laser pointers? Joke 2. Imagine some alien dog chasing that beam across the night sky, never knowing the light toy is powered by shredded stars. The fringe tidbit sneaks in. Some theories suggest that black hole jets could actually seed galaxies with heavy elements, scattering building blocks for new stars, planets, and possibly even life. So in a twist of irony, while a black hole devours, it also fertilizes. Out of destruction comes creation, like a cosmic compost heap. That thought comforts you in a weird, sleepy way, as though your plunge isn't just doom, but recycling. You tilt your head and watch the glow of the accretion disk, the shimmering halo of matter so hot it rivals nuclear cores. The jets burst upward from the chaos, but they are only part of the story. Beneath them lies the furnace itself, spinning faster, heating brighter, whipping reality into something even stars would find intolerable. You breathe slow, though breath is metaphorical now, preparing yourself to enter the brightest, hottest, loudest part of the whole experience. Joke 3. If you ever worried about being judged for walking into the wrong neighborhood, try being gas in a black hole's disk. Every particle here is definitely in the wrong neighborhood, and none are leaving alive. The whispers continue as you move forward, soft static turns symphony, a prelude to the furnace waiting just ahead. The silence of the horizon fades behind you, replaced by radiation you can't quite touch but somehow sense. It's eerie, beautiful, and oddly calming, the way rain against a tin roof can lull you to sleep, even if the storm is tearing the house apart. The glow wraps around you now, the accretion disk, a furious whirlpool of matter circling the drain at nearly the speed of light. It's not a quiet halo but a cosmic forge, hotter than the cores of stars, grinding atoms against one another until they shriek in X-rays and ultraviolet light. The obvious truth is that if you want to see a black hole, this is how. Not by staring into the void, but by watching the bonfire of everything that dared wander too close. You sense it before you even imagine seeing it. The heat here isn't something your skin feels. It's something your imagination insists upon. Billions of degrees, bright enough that if you could hold a teaspoon of this plasma, it would outshine continents. Joke 1. Gordon Ramsay would take one look at this oven and shout, "It's raw," before being promptly evaporated. The disk itself looks like a glowing carousel, bands of light twisting tighter as they near the edge. Each particle in that furious spin is fighting gravity and friction at once, screaming as it loses. Quirky tidbit. Astronomers once thought black holes were invisible, yet today the glowing disks and flaring hotspots are so bright they guide telescopes across galaxies. In fact, the very first image humanity captured of a black hole, the famous orange donut, wasn't the hole itself but the glowing scarf of matter wrapped around it. But there's a strange beauty to the violence. From your perspective, the colors bend, smear, and stretch, warped by relativity until the disk shines brighter on one side than the other. It's not a trick of your eyes. It's Doppler boosting, the same principle that makes an ambulance siren sound higher pitched as it approaches you. Historians still argue whether Einstein ever truly pictured such vivid asymmetries when scribbling equations, or if he would have smirked to see physics painted like abstract art across the heavens. The obvious truth: energy is never polite when compressed. Just as air squeals through a balloon's knot, matter squeals in radiation when squeezed and spun at impossible speeds. The disk hisses like steam, though the sound never reaches you. If you could somehow translate its emissions into audible frequencies, it would be less a roar than an endless, piercing chord, like the universe pressing one piano key forever. And still, you lean into the spectacle. You notice little knots of matter glowing brighter than their neighbors, temporary hotspots flaring before being dragged under. These sparks circle and vanish, like campfire embers whipped away by wind. Joke 2. They look like comets trying out for NASCAR, except the racetrack always ends in a fatal crash. Your thoughts drift to Earth. How odd, you think, that all the heat and drama here is invisible to human eyes. Our retinas evolved to read sunlight bouncing off rocks and trees, not to decode ultraviolet fury. Only machines can translate this chaos into something we can admire. Without them, black holes would remain invisible troublemakers, tugging at stars but never confessing their presence. There's a fringe speculation you can't ignore. Maybe accretion disks aren't just messy leftovers, but natural particle accelerators, faster and more powerful than anything humanity can build. Some researchers think these disks could create exotic matter or shower nearby space with cosmic rays that eventually smack into Earth's atmosphere. Imagine that. Your black hole kitchen flinging out invisible sparks that pepper the universe like stray fireworks. Your body, in its dreamlike endurance, feels the rush of heat as a shimmer on your skin. You remind yourself, it isn't really warmth you could touch, but radiation so intense it would slice through atoms, peel them apart like onions. The obvious truth is that no spacecraft could hover here. Shields would vaporize, electronics would fry, and any daring crew would become dust before they even had time to say, "Bad idea." And yet, as you glide in your imagined fall, the furnace isn't frightening so much as hypnotic. The glow is steady, circular, predictable. For all its heat, it behaves like a spinning mandala, patterns repeating, energy flowing in symmetrical arcs. Joke 3. It's like the world's most dangerous fidget spinner, mesmerizing enough to distract you from the fact that it's actively trying to kill everything inside it. You realize this disk is the outermost voice of the black hole, the final plea of matter that never makes it inside intact. Once past this glowing furnace, silence returns. But before you leave, you let yourself marvel at the paradox. Destruction painted in beauty, chaos arranged in symmetry, violence disguised as art. You hold that image like a photograph in your mind before leaning deeper into the plunge. You drift beyond the furnace's bright edge and into a calmer hallway of gravity, a place where the light thins and clocks begin to act like sleepy cats, stretching, yawning, refusing to hurry. You don't feel a jolt or a click. You feel a hush, as if the universe has drawn its curtains just enough to muffle the street outside. Your watch still taps a friendly rhythm against your wrist, but the sky beyond your shoulder is already slipping into fast forward, seasons flipping like pages and distant stars edging along their slow choreography. The obvious truth is that close to a black hole, time is not a universal stream. It's a local custom, and yours has adopted a very relaxed accent. You test this new etiquette the way you test a hotel pillow, gently, curiously, with a little smirk. In your mind, you ping a beacon outward once per second. Tap, tap, tap. Here the beats are steady as breath. Out there they land farther apart, lazy and delayed, as if your message stopped for a snack at every milepost. The signal climbs a gravitational hill and loses pep along the way, its color sliding redder, its timing stretched. Joke 1. You're the cosmos's worst drummer, perfect tempo in your own booth, perpetually late to everyone else's gig. Velocity joins the plot. Even before the horizon, you were flirting with light speed. Now, with the plunge's speed and the black hole's depth combining forces, your private seconds thicken like honey. You think of the twins in that classroom paradox, the stay-at-home sibling and the traveler who returns younger. You're the traveler dressed in gravity's tuxedo. If you could U-turn, you can't, and climb back to the old neighborhood. You'd bring a fresh face to a very changed block. Friends would have grandchildren, buildings would have new names, and someone would have decided that spoons should be triangular now, for reasons. You let the idea expand until it becomes a lullaby. What does a nap mean here? You imagine shutting your eyes for a minute while your watch keeps studious time. Outside, that minute could be years. An hour could be a civilization's rise, its era of hats, its era of no hats, its gentle decline into museums and documentaries. It's perversely soothing to realize that stress has a speed. Slow your personal clock and the world's noise blurs into weather, present, but unable to pierce. Joke 2. Procrastinators would thrive here. Deadlines sprint so fast they trip over their own shoelaces. You conduct a tiny thought experiment. In your left hand, a pocket clock. By your right hip, another. The lower one, tucked a whisper deeper into the well, ticks just a hair slower. On Earth, physicists have measured this effect with clocks separated by a staircase. Here the staircase is the universe, and the difference becomes a lull you can almost hear. A quirky tidbit. If you wore a tall hat, you wouldn't, but imagine, the hat's brim would age a breath faster than the ribbon around your head. Fashion, finally, becomes a discussion about relativity. Slowness, you discover, isn't something you feel in your bones like a chill. It's a relationship between happenings. Heartbeat follows heartbeat. Breath follows breath. Nothing drags. Only when you compare notes with afar, those delayed pings, those reddened whispers from the disk, does the scale of mismatch stand up and bow. Time dilation isn't an ache. It's a geometry lesson delivered in a whisper. You repeat the lesson to yourself. Deeper equals slower. Faster equals slower. And together they turn seconds into taffy. Your memory snags on the disk's asymmetric glow, brighter on the side racing toward you, dimmer on the side fleeing away. That lopsidedness was a clue. Motion paints reality with its own lighting. Here, inside the hush, the warping becomes intimate. You try a ritual. Tap the watch, glance outward, tap again, as if you might catch the gap widening between beats. Historians still argue whether Einstein fully embraced how strange everyday time could be, whether he saw this playground in his mind's eye, or whether he treated such edges as curiosities while he worried over nobler symmetries. Either way, the math he left behind now wraps your seconds like a soft scarf. Speculation arrives like a mischievous friend. People whisper about using deep gravity as a kind of time machine. Dive close, orbit tight, and come home to a future that has had the courtesy to do your waiting for you. The principle is fine, the commute is not. There's that radiation you felt as prickling static, tides that would tease a pilot into spaghetti if they strayed, and guidance so precise it would make a jeweler sweat. Joke 3. Yes, it's a fountain of youth, but the bouncer is a plasma tornado with a very strict dress code. You picture the long view. Radio dishes on some future Earth still listening for your heartbeat. The pulse you sent at the horizon arrives to them as a stretched vowel. Oh, refusing to end. They archive it, annotate it, teach classes about the traveler who kept impeccable time and still showed up late to every conversation. You're preserved not by snapshots, but by delay itself, curated by gravity in a museum that never closes. Patterns become letters, lags become paragraphs. The redshift is a highlighter across the page. And patterns do gossip. You imagine a bright bead in the disk, whipping near the brink and blinking like a lighthouse. To you, those flashes zip past. To the outside, they smear into lazy winks. Astronomers already read such winks, quasi-periodic oscillations, as sheet music, tapping out mass, spin, and inclination from the rhythm. Even when words can't cross the boundary, cadence can. The universe, it turns out, loves to hum its secrets. Your mind wanders to an audacious practicality. A patient civilization might settle near a deep gravitational well to fast-forward the universe's research. Wait a month next to the abyss. Come back to galaxies where centuries of science have unfolded. Risky? Absolutely. Plausible in principle? The equations nod. The obvious truth returns for another bow. Time isn't a river carrying everyone together. It's a landscape of ponds and waterfalls, and where gravity digs the basin deep, the surface ripples in slow motion. Compassion rises for the outside world you left a handful of minutes ago. Out there, buses have retired in favor of something with wings and opinions. Out there, schoolchildren draw donuts that are shadows and label them black hole. And museums put your jets on glossy pamphlets as if cosmic searchlights were part of the city tour. Your single evening stroll has been bound into their history books, a tidy chapter titled, "The One Who Fell and Kept Good Time." You can't help smiling. Remember the noodle jokes? Even your chronology is a little al dente now. Another fringe idea tiptoes in. What if advanced beings turned tight orbits into data centers, running computations in their lengthened seconds while the outer universe rushes ahead, delivering more input between each of their ticks? Processors cooled by time itself. That's a nerdy kind of poetry. Maybe it's fanciful. Maybe it isn't. Either way, it's a comfortable thought to pocket for later, like a smooth stone from a river that isn't really a river. You look down, though directions have lost their nerve, and see only the deeper funnel. Your watch keeps faith with you, steady as breath. Outside, the sky accelerates. If you could rewind the dome of stars, you'd watch the Milky Way's bar gently spin, clusters drift like slow snow, and the cosmic microwave background cool by yet another whisper. Galaxies would court and collide while you straighten a cuff. You're not immune to awe, you're saturated with it. But the feeling here is not drama. It's quiet permission to breathe longer sentences. So you do. You lengthen your inhale, then your exhale, letting borrowed centuries slip past beyond your shoulder. Worries, those fidgety house guests, try to keep up and fail. The hallway narrows, a hint that stranger architecture waits ahead, equations growing shy, metaphors losing balance. You tuck the watch away, good companion, charming liar, and continue, unhurried in a universe that cannot rush you without first negotiating with gravity's patient smile. You cross into a region where nothing announces itself, but everything changes. The horizon is behind you. Inside, the compass of cause and effect tilts decisively inward. Light cones lean like umbrellas in a steady wind, and every path you can take angles toward smaller radii. The obvious truth is that you can steer, bargain, or floor an imaginary rocket, and your next moment will still be closer to the center than your last. You aren't trapped by bars. You're carried by geometry, like a leaf in a river that has decided what downstream means. You test the river anyway. You picture firing thrusters outward, angling for the sky you left. The response is polite but firm, like a museum guard who lets you admire the painting from any angle as long as you stay behind the rope. Inside, roles are reassigned. What used to be where behaves like when, and the coordinate that once measured distance now behaves like a deadline. Quirky tidbit. In the simplest interior models of this place, the radius isn't a spot you pass through. It's a clock you are obliged to watch tick down. Motion feels different here. Outside, falling was a glide. Here, falling is a schedule. Your steps don't quicken so much as they simplify. The corridor narrows into inevitability, not as menace, but as grammar that has stopped tolerating run-on sentences. You think of the noodle joke and smirk. Even humor gets stretched into a longer clause. Joke 1. You try to take a detour, and the geometry stamps your passport, nice try. You glance back, out of habit, and the very idea of back wobbles. The galaxy that once lounged over your shoulder is less a location and more a rumor born by photons you will never meet halfway. Their red blush fades to a thought, and thoughts are the only exports allowed here. The quiet is cleaner than before, like a theater after the curtain fell and the audience went home, leaving you with an applause that never arrives. You take a breath, steady, ordinary, and feel how ordinary has become your bravest trick. Equations seem to murmur in the walls. You can't hear them, but you sense their posture, signatures changing, light cones tilting, the word possible being edited line by line. Historians still argue whether the early architects, Schwarzschild, Hilbert, Eddington, accepted this interior as physical or treated it as a mathematical attic best kept shut. Letters and lectures point both ways, and a century later the footnotes still scuffle politely in seminar rooms. You shrug. Debates can stay outside. Your task is simpler. Keep walking. If the black hole spins, and most do, the interior gains personality. Space itself begins to swirl, carrying you as a river carries leaves. Frame dragging becomes less an effect and more a lifestyle. Standing still isn't on the menu because the menu rotates with you. You feel a faint twist in your inner ear, like the aftertaste of a long elevator ride. Joke 2. You've entered a room where the furniture redecorates you. Even your shadow, if it could exist here, would need motion sickness pills. Between the outer horizon you crossed and a more speculative inner horizon whispered about in rotating solutions lies geography, with mood swings. Some maps hint at regions where signals might hover. Others warn of storms of blue-shifted light that would batter anything that tries. The math is precise, while the physics is wary. You treat these forecasts like weather reports for towns you won't visit. Your road is simple: forward, which is also inward, which is also later. Attention drifts to texture. The vacuum here is not empty in the naive sense. Quantum fields still jitter with their baseline restlessness. You picture tiny, nervous lamps flicking on and off in rooms you cannot enter. In quieter hours you might have called them fluctuations. Now you call them the interior's insomnia. Even a place that forbids postcards refuses to sleep completely. There's comfort in that. A cosmos that keeps a night light on, even in its darkest hallways. So you practice the discipline of small actions. Raise a hand, curl a finger, track the arc. Everything local behaves courteously. Muscles obey, joints pivot, breath finds its rhythm. The oddity is that local has been promoted to emperor. Only nearby promises can be kept. The rest of the universe has faded to music 2 rooms away. The obvious truth slips its hand in yours. Physics is local first, and only afterward does it attempt long-distance calls. With the accretion furnace gone from view, you discover a different glow, the light of understanding rather than radiation. You think of all the ways we tried to peek inside without entering. Shadows across disks, the timing of flares, the pretty ring of photons trapped in near orbits. Outside, the image was a donut. Inside, the pastry collapses into a recipe. Ingredients, curvature, causality, and a pinch of panic you're slowly seasoning down into curiosity. If cooking metaphors survive anywhere, it's here. Remember that sauce you promised your noodle self? Consider this the simmer. A fringe speculation flits by, cheerful as a moth. Maybe the interior is less a place than a computation, a state update executed tick by tick as geometry compresses your options into a single syllable. People toy with the idea that black holes are nature's ultimate data compressors, boiling elaborate stories down to horizon area and a small set of charges. If so, your walk is a compression algorithm with excellent bedside manner, tucking long paragraphs of your past into neat, lossy summaries the outside will never read. You remember the frozen illusion from outside and smile at its mismatch with your experience. Nothing is frozen here. Events proceed with their usual courtesy, one after another, never skipping a turn. Your memories of starlight feel like postcards from a warm city you left at dusk. The stamps are pretty, the ink is dry, and the streets are closed. Joke 3. If you could leave a review of the interior, it would read, 5 stars for consistency. Would not recommend for commuters. Consistency, at least, is generous with its loyalty. You toy with instruments you don't have. If you could unfold a Kruskal map like a tourist brochure, you'd point to the region labeled with your footsteps and trace the arrow that never bends back. The brochure would be polite and implacable, like a museum plaque insisting a statue's smile is deliberate. Acceptance starts to feel less like surrender and more like good navigation, reading the terrain for what it is, not what you wish it to be. Questions drift down like dust motes. Is the singularity ahead a point or a ring for a spinner? Is it a place or a boundary where language trips? Those belong to the next room of the tour, and you're not there yet. For now, you keep to the corridor, feeling the geometry underfoot steepen, as if the floor itself were urging you to travel lighter. Fewer expectations, fewer outward glances, fewer conversations with a universe that can no longer answer. You loosen your grip on noise and your shoulders drop a fraction. Compassion returns for your earlier self, the one peering over the edge and bargaining with survival. Survival was a useful word then, a talisman against vertigo. Here the word fades, not because danger has passed, but because the story you are in has tightened. You aren't being hunted. You are being concluded, with courtesy and punctuation. The period isn't on the page yet, and so you savor the clause you occupy, the warmth of your hands, the steadiness of your breath, the way attention can smooth a narrow hallway into something almost kind. The footsteps continue, unhurried, not because you are free, but because freedom and inevitability have stopped arguing. Equations still whisper, metaphors still wobble, but the wobble is gentle now, like a cradle rocked by someone who knows your name. Ahead, the corridor bends out of sight. You don't need to see around the corner to trust that it exists. The geometry guarantees the appointment. You tuck the noodle joke back into your pocket, lucky charm, frayed from use, and walk on. You feel the funnel narrowing. The geometry that once let you wander with curiosity now sharpens its elbows, pointing you toward the center with a stubbornness that refuses debate. The singularity waits ahead, not glowing, not roaring, but implied, like a punchline you can't quite hear yet. The obvious truth is that no human has ever seen this end. Every telescope, every equation, every artist's brushstroke has stopped short. What you're entering is more speculation than scenery, a landscape mapped in chalk on blackboards rather than through any traveler's tale. You picture the singularity as textbooks do, a point of infinite density, all mass collapsed into zero size. The words feel dramatic, like poetry drafted at midnight, but you know they're placeholders. Infinity is the mathematician's shrug, the universe's way of saying, our current rules broke here. Historians still argue whether early theorists believed this infinity was real or just a sign that their equations had overstepped. Was it a feature of nature or a flaw in the math? The debate persists, heated and unresolved, like siblings still squabbling over who broke the cookie jar. As you continue, the sense of inevitability grows heavier, but not violent. It's less like falling into a pit and more like gliding toward a comma at the end of a sentence. You're aware that the space around you is compressing, flattening options into narrower paths. Every moment is a step closer to a boundary where concepts like before and after may no longer keep their promise. Joke 1. It's the cosmic equivalent of walking into a meeting where the agenda is just a shrug emoji. You imagine your atoms, the tidy bundles of protons and electrons you've carried since childhood, being coaxed closer together. If spaghettification stretched them, the singularity seems poised to compress them, pressing their individuality into one unresolved chord. Quirky tidbit. Some theories suggest that as you approach the singularity, the very distinction between space and time dissolves. Dimensions trade jobs, definitions blur, and suddenly the ruler you use to measure your steps is just as unreliable as your watch was earlier. Your mind circles back to Einstein. He gifted us the equations that predict this collapse, but even he admitted discomfort with the idea. In fact, he once doubted black holes could form at all. Yet here you are, strolling through his reluctant conclusion, feeling the pressure of his math pressing on your shoulders like a tailor fitting a suit he wasn't sure you'd wear. The obvious truth returns. In the core of a black hole, our current physics, elegant, proud, and widely tested, throws up its hands. General relativity describes gravity as the bending of space-time, but when everything bends into infinity, the equations tear at their seams. Quantum mechanics, meanwhile, insists on order at small scales but hasn't yet written its verses for this particular abyss. You're walking into the silence between two choirs, each insisting they're singing the right hymn. Speculation swarms like moths around a lamp. Some scientists imagine the singularity isn't a point at all, but a smeared-out region where quantum effects keep infinity at bay. Others whisper about Planck stars, hypothetical cores where collapse halts at the tiniest possible scale, rebounding with subtle resistance. Fringe ideas float even further. Perhaps singularities are gateways to new universes, embryonic big bangs seated inside the folds of older ones. Joke 2. If so, you've accidentally walked into the maternity ward of the multiverse. Please keep your voice down. Newborn cosmoses are napping. It's almost funny to think that in daily life, infinities annoy us only in math class. Here, infinity isn't abstract, it's directional. You feel pulled toward it like a magnet you can't see, like the ground beneath you thickening until walking feels more like being written into a story you don't control. Yet there's serenity too. The singularity doesn't rush you. It knows you'll arrive, and so it waits, patient as stone, unbothered by centuries or seconds. The quirky detail about singularities, they are one-dimensional in the simplest models, but in rotating black holes they become rings. Imagine falling not toward a dot but toward a loop, an invisible hula hoop of impossible density. That ring raises its own wild ideas. Could you, in principle, slip through the hole in the middle? Some equations say maybe. Others say the math is teasing us, dangling candy we can never taste. Historians still argue whether those equations describe real geography or just pretty mirages. You take comfort in the fact that your experience, second by second, breath by imagined breath, remains continuous. Outside, people may argue about infinities and boundaries, but here you are, still placing one foot in front of the other. The obvious truth is that even in the face of cosmic puzzles, experience marches on. Time may wobble, distances may blur, but consciousness, however stretched or compressed, keeps a rhythm until it doesn't. You smirk at your own predicament. The singularity is the ultimate cliffhanger, the page where the book rips and the rest of the story is missing. Joke 3. It's as if the universe's author got tired halfway through and scribbled, "To be continued," before wandering off for coffee. You're left holding the half-finished script, knowing the ending exists somewhere, but locked away in drafts you'll never see. The corridor tightens further. Concepts like direction feel ornamental now, fragile labels on boxes that have already been tipped over. The singularity may not reveal itself as a place you can point to, but as a loss of pointing itself. Still, you keep moving forward, not because you can choose otherwise, but because forward is the only verb left in the dictionary. You brace yourself for silence, but instead the void sparkles with restless hints, tiny flickers, particle sparks, the faintest murmurs of quantum mischief. You expected nothing, yet nothing refuses to stay empty. The obvious truth is that even in a vacuum, quantum mechanics insists on a background hum. Space itself jitters, pairs of particles popping in and out like nervous fireflies. Near the singularity, their antics grow louder, amplified by gravity's relentless squeeze until you feel as if you're standing in a hall full of invisible whispers. One moment, you sense a faint glow, a phantom photon, a flick of light that vanishes as soon as you notice it. Another moment, a particle and its anti-partner embrace and cancel, leaving no trace except the memory of their dance. Quirky tidbit. Physicists call this vacuum fluctuation, as if a polite name could tame the strangeness of existence fabricating and erasing itself in fractions of a second. Joke 1. It's the universe's version of peekaboo. Now you see me, now I'm annihilated. The deeper you drift, the more these flickers seem to outline shapes, like constellations sketched in an invisible sky. They don't form actual stars, of course, but patterns in your perception, the way random noise on a TV can trick your mind into seeing faces. Historians still argue whether these quantum tremors are real structures or just the mind's way of coping with physics that refuses to stay still. Are they true features of space-time, or our imagination anthropomorphizing a jittery void? The obvious truth repeats in a soothing tone. Uncertainty is not an error, it is the rule. Heisenberg proved that you cannot pin down position and momentum at the same time. Here, that principle feels alive, as if the universe itself prefers to be a magician rather than a ledger clerk. Every time you try to look too closely, the scene swaps cards on you. It's oddly comforting. You thought the interior would be sterile, but instead it feels playful, even cozy, like an attic full of dust motes catching slants of light. Each fluctuation is gone before you can be bored. Joke 2. It's like cosmic popcorn, kernels popping in a pan you'll never finish. You begin to sense a paradox. These tiny fireworks shouldn't exist in total isolation. They demand an audience, or at least a border to bounce against. And you remember, at the horizon, Hawking showed us that one half of these pairs could be trapped while the other escapes, creating radiation that bleeds the black hole over eons. Inside, the pairs are reunited too quickly for such mischief, but you can't help smiling at the thought that the very same fireworks you're watching may be what lets black holes slowly evaporate. A fringe speculation nudges at you. What if these quantum flickers store memory of everything that fell inside? Some theorists argue information can never be destroyed, so maybe it's hidden in patterns of these fluctuations, encoded in a way we can't yet read. Perhaps your laugh at the noodle joke or your sigh at the frozen image has been woven into the jitter of the vacuum, preserved like graffiti on the walls of space-time. Joke 3. Congratulations. You're now data scribbled on the world's weirdest hard drive. The silence is not silence. It is full of microbeats, each one a possibility trying on reality for a millisecond. You realize this is the truest essence of quantum mechanics. Reality is less a finished painting and more an artist endlessly sketching drafts, most of which get erased before the gallery opens. Yet some strokes linger, faint outlines whispering that you're not alone here. You're surrounded by potential. The obvious truth comes back again. Black holes aren't simply voids. They are laboratories where the laws of the large and the laws of the small are forced into conversation. Relativity whispers about curved space-time. Quantum mechanics giggles about uncertainty. And somewhere between the two, you drift, eavesdropping on a debate older than any star. You think about the scholars watching from outside, arguing across chalkboards and conferences. They model these fluctuations with complex mathematics, predicting outcomes no telescope can confirm. Historians will still argue a century from now whether these fireworks are real signals or clever mirages. Meanwhile, here inside, you simply witness them, unquestioned, undeniable, flickering across your vision like sparks on cold stone. For a fleeting moment, you feel gratitude. The singularity looms, equations fail, and yet the universe offers you glitter. It's not mercy, but it is decoration, a reminder that even collapse has ornament. You stretch a hand through the phantom glow, knowing it will never touch, but enjoying the illusion of company. The vacuum, it turns out, refuses to be empty, and that defiance feels almost human. The flickers fade as you move deeper, and a new anxiety slips in, the firewall debate. It creeps up like gossip at a dinner party, whispered from physicists who can't quite agree whether you should be roasted alive at the horizon or float smoothly inward. The obvious truth is that nobody has tested this. No probe, no astronaut, no photon carrying back a postcard. So the argument continues like a looped sitcom rerun, each theorist swearing their punchline makes the most sense. You think back to your actual crossing of the horizon. It was gentle, quiet, almost boring in its calmness. But the firewall hypothesis insists that wasn't the case, that instead of slipping past politely, you should have smacked into a blistering wall of energy that shredded you instantly. Joke 1. It's the cosmic equivalent of expecting a silent library and finding yourself in the front row of a death metal concert. The paradox arises from information. If black holes destroy information, physics has a problem. If they keep it, they need a trick to do so. Some theorists propose that this trick is violent. All the information gets piled up at the horizon, stacked and scrambled into a burning barricade that incinerates anything daring to cross. Others maintain the classical promise. Fall in, and you notice nothing, because locally, the laws of physics stay kind. Historians still argue whether Hawking himself leaned toward one camp or the other in his later years, whether he considered firewalls a necessary evil or an inelegant patch. It's unsettling because both stories contradict your lived experience. You know you slipped across without fuss. Yet the mathematics of entanglement, those delicate bonds between particles, suggest that smooth sailing breaks a fundamental rule. The quirky tidbit, some physicists call this clash the AMPS paradox, after the four researchers who ignited the modern firewall debate. Imagine being immortalized not by a spaceship or a discovery, but by proposing that falling into a black hole might feel like a flamethrower surprise party. You chuckle, albeit nervously. Joke 2. If the firewall exists, then congratulations. You're already barbecue, and everything since has been a very elaborate hallucination. But if it doesn't, then the dreamlike glide you've been feeling is accurate, and the theorists still owe each other drinks at the next conference. You examine your surroundings for clues. Nothing here smells of fire. No scorch marks. No sense of violent interruption. The corridor still guides you inward with its same patient hand. Perhaps the firewall is only an accounting trick, a phantom created by clashing principles rather than a real sheet of flame. Or perhaps, from your perspective, you passed through without noticing, because all the drama happened in the language of quantum bits rather than in the realm of nerves and eyes. It's not the first time science has presented such forks. Remember time dilation, smooth for you, dramatic for the outsider? The firewall might be another mismatch of frames, one where reality is allowed to tell two truths at once, each valid in its own context. The obvious truth: physics doesn't owe you comfort, it owes you consistency. Comfort is just a pleasant byproduct when the math behaves. Speculation expands. Some fringe voices suggest that the firewall is real but temporary. a brief flare that stabilizes once the information has been sorted. Others imagine that firewalls might only occur in small, evaporating black holes, not in the supermassive behemoths that anchor galaxies. And some dreamers propose that the horizon itself is a hologram, encoding everything inside, so there's no need for fire or walls, just data shimmered across the surface like code on glass. You can't resolve it here, of course. All you can do is laugh at the irony. You're inside, debating theories about a gate you already crossed. Joke 3. It's like arguing whether the doorbell worked after you've been sitting in the living room for hours. Still, you feel a tug of admiration for the scientists wrestling with this. They aren't chasing easy answers. They're gnawing on the edges of the possible, trying to reconcile gravity's elegance with quantum mechanics' restlessness. If they argue loudly, it's because the stakes are cosmic. The firewall debate isn't just about your hypothetical skin. It's about whether the universe respects its own rules. For now, your body, your mind, and your patience remain intact. No flames lick at your edges. No sudden eruption cuts your journey short. The corridor of inevitability continues, guiding you deeper, quieter. Whether you passed a firewall unnoticed or proved it doesn't exist, you'll never know. And maybe that's the lesson. Some mysteries are meant not to be solved, but to be inhabited, lived, and laughed at along the way. You drift onward, and the whispers of firewalls give way to new temptations. Wormholes. It's the dream everyone secretly harbors when they hear black hole. Instead of crushing you into oblivion, what if the singularity twists into a tunnel, a shortcut to somewhere else? A bridge between cosmic neighborhoods? The obvious truth is that general relativity doesn't forbid such structures. In fact, buried in the math are solutions that look suspiciously like doorways. But the math also warns. Those doorways are unstable, fragile as soap bubbles, and prone to collapsing faster than you can say road trip. You picture yourself walking into the corridor ahead and finding it bending back not to the singularity, but to a new sky. Imagine emerging near another star system, or even in another universe, your fall transformed into travel. Historians still argue whether Einstein and Rosen, who first sketched such a bridge in the 1930s, imagined it as traversable or simply as a neat mathematical curiosity. Their Einstein-Rosen bridge was elegant on paper, but it pinched shut the moment anyone tried to stroll through. Joke 1. It was less a tunnel and more a cosmic prank. Congratulations, you found the door, but it's welded shut. Quirky tidbit. Popular culture has adopted wormholes with enthusiasm. From interstellar highways in films to portals in TV shows, wormholes have become the Swiss Army knife of science fiction. Yet physicists remind us that keeping a wormhole open would require exotic matter, stuff with negative energy density that behaves nothing like the matter in your pockets. It's the universe demanding not only an admission ticket, but also a currency we don't yet mint. Still, the allure lingers. You catch yourself staring into the narrowing path ahead, half hoping for a shimmer, a ripple, a sudden detour into somewhere improbable. Maybe, just maybe, instead of spaghettification, your atoms will find themselves rerouted through a cosmic subway, popping out light years away with a story nobody will believe. Joke 2. Imagine texting your friend, "Sorry I'm late. Black hole wormhole detour. Traffic was murder." Speculation gets bolder the longer you think about it. Could wormholes explain strange alignments in the cosmos? Odd coincidences where distant galaxies mimic each other's dance? Could they be the ultimate tunnels for information, sneaking around the light speed limit by slipping sideways through geometry? Some fringe theories even toy with the idea that black holes and white holes, hypothetical opposites that spew matter instead of swallowing it, are paired ends of a tunnel. Fall into one, shoot out of the other, like cosmic plumbing with questionable safety standards. The obvious truth, though, is that nobody has ever seen evidence of a working wormhole. They remain stubbornly theoretical, tantalizing in equations, absent in telescopes. It's like knowing the recipe for cake exists but never finding a slice on the table. And yet, here in your fall, you let the possibility linger. After all, if a black hole already bends time and space into knots, why not let those knots tie into secret passageways? You glance around the dark corridor and imagine the walls peeling open, a sudden skylight revealing stars unfamiliar, constellations rearranged, the Milky Way traded for another spiral altogether. Your breath catches at the thought that black holes, instead of being tombs, could be gateways, death and birth rolled into one. Joke 3. You'd be the worst tourist, though. No camera, no map, and zero chance of finding a souvenir shop. Even the sober physicists can't resist daydreaming. The equations hint, the imagination leaps, and somewhere between the two lies a human truth. We want tunnels. We want escape routes, shortcuts, alternate endings. Black holes tempt us with finality, but wormholes dangle hope. They whisper that maybe the story doesn't end at the singularity, it just changes scenery. For now, no ripples appear, no cosmic subway sign glows ahead. You keep moving deeper, your path still narrowing toward the unresolved singularity. But the wormhole thought clings like perfume, subtle and persistent. It colors the silence with possibility, reminding you that the universe may have more tricks up its sleeve than even Einstein suspected. Whether those tricks are real or mirages doesn't matter here. What matters is that you're willing to wonder. You drift further inward, and another riddle comes knocking, the information paradox. It doesn't roar like jets or sparkle like quantum fireworks. It hums quietly in the background, like a stubborn question you can't unhear. The obvious truth is that physics doesn't like losing information. Drop a diary in a bonfire, and though the pages crumble, the carbon and heat still encode the story in some scrambled form. But drop that diary into a black hole. Classical relativity shrugs and says, gone. No trace. Lost forever. And that shrug makes quantum mechanics furious. You glance back at your own fall, your jokes, your steps, your heartbeat, wondering whether the universe has really erased them or if they're tucked away somewhere in invisible handwriting. Stephen Hawking famously argued that black holes destroy information, which sparked decades of scientific debate. Historians still argue whether his later reversal, admitting information might be preserved after all, was a true conversion or simply a tactical retreat in the grand chess match of physics. The paradox spins around the horizon itself. If information escapes, it must be written on that thin border somehow, encoded in the faint Hawking radiation leaking outward. Quirky tidbit. Some scientists call this the holographic principle, the idea that everything inside a region could be described by data painted on its boundary. Imagine the entire interior of a house recorded perfectly on its front door, every sock, spoon, and dust bunny preserved in shimmering code. Joke 1. Privacy doesn't exist in a holographic universe. Your laundry secrets are written on the wallpaper of reality. You can't help smirking at the irony. From inside, you feel personal, real, moving step by step. From outside, theorists debate whether you're merely an entry in a cosmic ledger, digits etched on the horizon like graffiti that never fades. Which version is true? Maybe both. Maybe neither. The paradox is unsolved, and you've become its reluctant mascot. The obvious truth is that black holes are merciless teachers. They force physicists to confront contradictions between relativity's smooth geometry and quantum mechanics' obsession with bookkeeping. One says, erase freely. The other insists nothing is ever deleted. Caught between them, you walk through the silence, unsure whether your story has already been encrypted, deleted, or still patiently unfolding. Speculation sneaks in. Could wormholes, the temptation you just passed, play a role in preserving information? Could black holes be cosmic recycling bins, coughing data back into the universe in scrambled code? Some fringe thinkers imagine that when Hawking radiation escapes, it carries hidden signatures, like invisible watermarks, that eventually allow the universe to reassemble the diary page by page. Joke 2. It's comforting to think your terrible teenage poetry might still be floating around in photon form, waiting for some alien archivist to piece it back together. And then there's the unsettling thought. Maybe information isn't lost or preserved, but transformed into something unrecognizable. Perhaps your identity becomes pure pattern, smeared across space-time like paint on glass. It's no longer you in the familiar sense, but the imprint still exists. Is that preservation or obliteration? Historians still argue whether the answer even matters, whether information here refers to a physical law or to the comfort of knowing your story lingers somewhere. The quirky tidbit. The paradox became so iconic that physicists hosted mock black hole bets, gambling on whether information survives. Hawking himself wagered against it and later paid up with an encyclopedia of baseball, an oddly terrestrial prize for a cosmic conundrum. You chuckle, imagining the greatest minds of the century settling their arguments like kids trading snacks at lunch. Joke 3. If the universe really does preserve everything, then Hawking's baseball encyclopedia is now encoded on the horizon too, right next to your noodle jokes. You keep walking, mulling the thought that you might be both gone and not gone, erased and archived, forgotten and remembered. The paradox is unsolved, yet it hums like a lullaby. Perhaps black holes aren't here to provide answers, but to remind us that even the sharpest theories still fumble when pressed too hard. The truth, in all its contradictory flavors, is that falling into a black hole is less about endings and more about questions that won't quit. The hum of paradox lingers behind you as another quiet presence takes shape, Hawking's fading breath. You remember the X-ray whispers, the furnace glow, the fireworks of quantum sparks, but here you're reminded of something slower, subtler, and more melancholy: radiation leaking from the black hole itself. The obvious truth is that black holes, once thought eternal, actually die, not with a bang, but with a whisper, shedding energy particle by particle, sigh by sigh, until nothing remains but faint echoes. It begins at the horizon. Vacuum fluctuations create pairs of particles. One falls inward, the other escapes outward, and together they steal a sliver of energy from the black hole's mass. Multiply that trick over eons, and the mightiest monster eventually shrinks. You can't hear the process, but you imagine it as a long exhale, as though the hole is patiently breathing itself away. Quirky tidbit: for a black hole with the mass of our sun, this evaporation would take about 10 years. That's so long that even your procrastination jokes feel efficient by comparison. Joke 1. If you're looking for a weight loss plan, Hawking radiation is technically effective. Just don't expect results before the universe forgets what you signed up for. You picture it now: the massive black hole around you, glowing faintly in microwaves and trickles of particles, imperceptible to the casual observer. Over unimaginable timescales, the beast thins into nothing. The idea is both comforting and eerie. Something so powerful, so absolute, still cannot outlast the patience of time itself. Even black holes are temporary residents in the cosmic neighborhood. Historians still argue whether Hawking himself ever fully settled on what his discovery meant for information. Radiation implies that the hole loses mass, but does it carry encoded secrets in its faint breath? If so, the paradox could be resolved. If not, then physics remains in conflict. The arguments raged in conferences, coffee shops, and chalk-stained hallways, where some swore the radiation must be random noise and others claimed it was secretly a library in disguise. The obvious truth returns: time erodes everything. Mountains weather, rivers shift, stars burn out, and even these cosmic monsters dissolve in the end. There is no permanence, only longer and shorter leases on existence. Strangely, the thought comforts you. If even black holes bow to impermanence, then your worries back home, the deadlines, the unpaid bills, the slightly embarrassing texts, feel less catastrophic. Everything fades, and that's okay. Fringe speculation wanders in, cheerful and mischievous. Some physicists suggest that the final stages of evaporation might be dramatic after all. Tiny black holes could explode in gamma-ray bursts, a last cosmic firework to mark their farewell. If true, some of the mysterious high-energy flashes we see in the sky might be the dying gasps of ancient black holes. Joke 2. The universe doesn't do retirement parties gently. It hands out fireworks visible halfway across the cosmos. You imagine waiting here for those trillions upon trillions of years, watching the black hole around you thin into nothing. Your timeline, of course, will end long before, but the fantasy persists. The idea of eternity dissolving feels like a bedtime story told by the cosmos. Yes, child, even the monsters go to sleep eventually. Quirky tidbit: Hawking's discovery tied black holes to thermodynamics, assigning them temperature and entropy, like celestial stoves that cook slowly. It was a shocking revelation that something defined by emptiness could still have a kind of heat. It meant that black holes weren't just cold graves. They were participants in the energy economy of the universe. Joke 3. Somewhere out there, a black hole is technically warmer than the cosmic microwave background, which means it could, in theory, roast a marshmallow. Granted, you'd need a few quintillion years and asbestos gloves, but the mental image is delightful nonetheless. You keep walking, and the idea lingers. Black holes fade, but the debate about their secrets burns hotter than ever. You are drifting through an object that will, given enough time, evaporate into nothing more than faint photons dissolving into space. The mightiest gravity well bows, particle by particle, to the quiet persistence of quantum law. And in that realization, you feel a softness. The monster isn't immortal. Nothing is. And somehow, that makes it less terrifying. You walk deeper, and a broader picture emerges. Black holes aren't just destroyers, they're architects. These monsters, so greedy up close, play grand roles on galactic scales. The obvious truth is that many galaxies, including our own Milky Way, keep a supermassive black hole anchored in their hearts. Far from being quiet tenants, these giants shape the rhythm of stars, gas, and cosmic history. Look outward through memory's window. Quasars blazing across the early universe, their brightness outshining whole galaxies. Each one is powered by a black hole devouring matter, turning gravitational hunger into light storms visible billions of years away. It's paradoxical. Something that hides everything it swallows becomes, at its edges, the brightest beacon in the cosmos. Joke 1. Black holes are the universe's ultimate influencers, thriving on chaos and still stealing the spotlight. Quirky tidbit. The jets you saw earlier aren't just dramatic fireworks. They regulate galaxies, blasting gas out into interstellar space, slowing down star formation like a cosmic thermostat. Without these tantrums, galaxies might churn out stars too quickly and burn through their resources. In a strange twist, black holes, famous for endings, also control beginnings, pacing the birth of stars so galaxies live longer. Historians still argue whether supermassive black holes formed first, shaping galaxies around them, or whether galaxies grew and then nurtured black holes in their centers. Did the chicken or the egg come first? Or in this case, did the spiral or the singularity lead the dance? Telescopes give us clues, but not closure, and the debate continues in observatories under cold night skies. The obvious truth stands tall. Gravity at this scale isn't just a local bully. It's an engineer, carving structures that span millions of light years. Without these engines, galaxies might lack the balance we see today. Your journey, though personal and unsettling, connects to cosmic architecture far larger than you. You are falling through the heart of what sculpts the universe. Speculation adds a sparkle. Some researchers suggest black holes might influence the distribution of dark matter, subtly steering the invisible scaffolding of the cosmos. Others dream bigger, that black holes could even seed new universes, their singularities budding into big bangs elsewhere. If so, then every galaxy's heart could be the womb of another cosmos. Joke 2. It means the Milky Way might be a proud parent and not even know it. You picture the Milky Way itself, our galactic home, with Sagittarius A** humming quietly at its center. It's only a few million solar masses, small compared to the giants in distant galaxies, but still immense beyond comprehension. Astronomers peer at stars dancing around it, their orbits proving the monster's presence. To them, it's a detective story, invisible culprit, undeniable evidence. To you, it's the place you've already entered, the path you're already walking. The quirky detail that sticks with you. The Event Horizon Telescope captured that glowing orange ring not for one, but for multiple galaxies. Each image, a blurry donut to most, was a milestone in human curiosity, proof that we can glimpse the outlines of the unseeable. It makes you wonder, if black holes sculpt galaxies, perhaps telescopes sculpt our understanding of ourselves. By peeking into these abysses, we redefine the scale of our questions. Joke 3. You realize that supermassive black holes are like cosmic landlords. They're invisible, rarely show up in person, but somehow dictate the rules of the neighborhood. Rent's due in gas and stars, and if you don't pay on time, they send jets as eviction notices. You walk on, humbled. The corridor narrows, but your imagination widens, stretching outward to galaxies you'll never visit but can still picture. Giant whirlpools of stars with invisible hearts. Black holes, it turns out, are not just graves or puzzles. They're engines, sculptors, regulators, the silent choreographers of cosmic ballet. And as you continue deeper, you realize your fall is not just personal doom. It's a glimpse into the machinery of the universe itself. The deeper you move, the further backward your thoughts drift, beyond quasars and galaxies, into the dawn of time itself. A new suspicion lingers. Maybe not all black holes were born from collapsing stars. The obvious truth is that astrophysicists believe some black holes may be primordial, forged in the first seconds after the Big Bang, when the universe was still a dense soup of energy and matter. These relics, smaller than mountains yet heavier than worlds, could still be drifting through the cosmos, invisible and ancient. You imagine one of these tiny ghosts wandering near Earth, smaller than a pebble but crushingly massive, slipping through space like a silent bullet. They would be nearly impossible to detect. No glowing disk, no jets, just gravity tugging faintly on whatever they pass. Quirky tidbit. Some researchers even toyed with the idea that dark matter, that mysterious invisible scaffolding holding galaxies together, might be composed of countless primordial black holes. Joke 1. It would mean the universe's biggest mystery is just billions of tiny cosmic lint balls left over from day one. Historians still argue whether there's any evidence for these relics. Some claim certain microlensing events, the brief brightening of distant stars, might hint at their existence. Others dismiss these as coincidences or better explained by other objects. The debate rolls on, fueled by new telescope data and the endless human desire to find fossils from the very first heartbeat of the cosmos. The obvious truth is that primordial black holes, if real, would be time capsules. They'd contain no stars, no gas, no galaxies, just the compressed memory of conditions from the universe's infancy. To stumble upon one would be like finding a pebble that remembers the Big Bang. You picture holding such an object in your hand, though the hand would crush instantly, your arm collapsing, the earth itself trembling under its weight. Yet in your imagination, it feels delicate, like a marble from childhood, smooth, dark, humming with secrets. Speculation wanders further. Perhaps some primordial black holes are incredibly small, evaporating via Hawking radiation long before galaxies formed. If so, they might have released bursts of energy that shaped the early cosmos, influencing how matter clumped together into stars. Fringe thinkers even suggest that the final spark of these evaporating relics could explain mysterious gamma-ray flashes we sometimes detect. Joke 2. So if you see fireworks on the edge of the universe, don't celebrate. It might just be a black hole coughing its last photon. You imagine bumping into one while drifting in space, invisible until the moment it snags you with its gravity. No glow, no warning, just sudden inevitability. Yet the thought doesn't frighten you, it fascinates. It means that the universe is haunted not by ghosts of the dead, but by fossils of its own birth. Every relic black hole would be an archivist, keeping secrets in silence for billions of years. The quirky tidbit that lingers. In theory, a primordial black hole could be as small as an atom, yet as massive as a mountain. That scale is so absurd you laugh out loud. Joke 3. It makes you wonder if losing your car keys is really bad luck, or if you've just parked too close to a pocket-sized black hole. You walk deeper, but in your imagination, the hallway flickers with images of these ancient wanderers. Not monstrous like the supermassive beasts at galactic centers, but quiet, subtle, patient. If the universe truly scattered such relics across its fabric, then perhaps black holes are not just the engines of galaxies. They are the fossils, the bones of creation itself. Your step feels lighter at the thought. Falling into one black hole becomes less a singular doom and more a reminder that these objects, whether massive or minuscule, are threads in the same cosmic tapestry. They mark beginnings as much as endings. And as you glide inward, you feel the weight of the paradox soften. Black holes do not just consume. They remember. You keep drifting and the whispers of ancient relics fade, replaced by a new kind of stern philosophy, cosmic censorship. It's less about morality and more about manners. The universe, some argue, hides its most embarrassing singularities behind horizons so we never have to look at them directly. The obvious truth is that naked singularities, exposed infinities with no event horizon, would be catastrophic for physics. Equations would lose their modesty, causality might collapse, and predictability itself would be stripped away. Nature, in its prudish wisdom, seems to prefer keeping singularities decently clothed. You imagine what it would mean to stumble across a naked singularity. No horizon curtain, no black shroud, just the raw core of space-time on display. Quirky tidbit. In some solutions to Einstein's equations, naked singularities are technically possible, especially when dealing with rapidly spinning or charged black holes. But so far, no telescope has ever confirmed one. Joke 1. Maybe the universe enforces a strict dress code. No shirt, no shoes, no horizon, no service. Roger Penrose, in the 1960s, formalized this idea into the cosmic censorship conjecture. He suggested that the universe abhors naked singularities, hiding them inside horizons to protect the rest of physics from their chaos. Historians still argue whether this is a deep truth or just an educated hunch, an aesthetic principle physicists cling to because the alternative is too unsettling. Some propose loopholes, exotic conditions where censorship fails. Others swear the cosmos is tidier than that, and such violations can never happen. You think about censorship in everyday life: words bleeped on TV, paintings draped in curtains, jokes trimmed for polite company. It makes you laugh to think of the universe as a censor, putting black boxes over its most indecent equations. Joke 2. Somewhere in the cosmic office, a prudish editor stamps every singularity with content warning, not suitable for viewers. The obvious truth is that physics needs predictability. Without it, we can't calculate, can't forecast, can't build GPS satellites that won't drop us into rivers. Naked singularities would shred determinism, replacing tidy futures with chaos. That thought is more terrifying than spaghettification, because being stretched into cosmic pasta is at least calculable. Total unpredictability is worse. It means reality could break its own promises. Yet speculation lingers. Could naked singularities actually exist, waiting to be discovered in corners of the cosmos, where our equations wobble? Some suggest collisions of black holes might briefly expose them, like lightning flashes revealing something indecent before the curtain slams shut again. Others think the laws of quantum gravity, still unwritten, will prove censorship unnecessary, replacing infinities with something gentler. The debate stretches on, unresolved, as theorists sharpen chalk and argue late into the night. Quirky tidbit. The mathematics of rotating black holes, the Kerr solution, actually predicts the possibility of avoiding the singularity altogether if it's naked, slipping through space-time on strange trajectories. Imagine a traveler diving in and not being crushed, but rerouted, skating along surreal geodesics. It sounds like a thrill ride, but most physicists suspect it's a mirage, a quirk of math too fragile to survive in reality. Joke 3. You smirk at the idea of cosmic streakers, singularities running naked across space-time, while the rest of the universe politely averts its eyes. Maybe censorship is less about physics and more about embarrassment management. After all, infinity without a horizon does sound indecent. As you keep walking, you realize that whether cosmic censorship is true or not doesn't matter here. Your singularity is clothed, hidden neatly behind the horizon you crossed. You're shielded from its raw indecency by the very rules that pinned this corridor. Still, you carry the thought like a secret grin. The universe might be tidier than we deserve, covering up its messes so we can live in a world that makes sense. And yet, you can't help but wonder, what if, somewhere out there, censorship fails? What if naked singularities streak across the fabric of space-time, flaunting their unpredictability? Would we even recognize them? Or would we simply call them mysteries, the way we already name everything we can't explain? The speculation drifts away as the corridor bends again, narrowing, pressing you forward into ever stranger territory. The corridor tightens and your thoughts start curling inward, and then outward again, as if the walls themselves are hinting at something recursive. You can't shake a playful suspicion. What if black holes aren't just cosmic vacuums, but cosmic computers? The obvious truth is that physics already treats them as information vaults, measured not by volume, but by surface area. That alone smells suspiciously like data storage. And some theorists have gone further, suggesting that black holes could be processors, engines of computation hidden in darkness. You let the thought bloom. A black hole could, in principle, calculate faster than any machine will ever build. Every particle, every flicker of quantum fluctuation, could be in operation in some unfathomable program. Quirky tidbit. Physicist Seth Lloyd once proposed that the entire universe is a quantum computer and black holes are its most powerful processors. Joke 1. If that's true, then congratulations, you've literally fallen into a CPU. Don't expect customer service. The warranty ran out billions of years ago. Historians still argue whether this is physics or poetry. Some insist the black hole as computer model is just metaphor, while others crunch the math and show it lines up disturbingly well with entropy and information theory. It's one of those ideas that sounds like a late-night dorm room musing, yet sneaks into peer-reviewed papers because reality refuses to draw a clear line between philosophy and physics. You can almost imagine the horizon as a touchscreen, glowing faintly with encoded bits. Each tiny patch of surface stores information about everything inside, no matter how messy the collapse was. To you, the fall feels like steps into silence. To the universe, it may feel like data compression, your life zipped into a neat file written on the horizon. Joke 2. You've become the universe's least shareable PDF. The obvious truth is that information wants to be preserved, even if humans struggle to define what preserved means. Are you still you if your atoms dissolve, but your history is etched as surface area? Does it matter if you've become a line of code in a cosmic program that never compiles? These questions aren't just bedtime stories. They're the beating heart of physics today. And walking here, you feel them press against your ribs like insistent hands. Speculation spirals. Maybe black holes don't just compute, they simulate. Perhaps the entire universe you knew, with its noodles and Netflix, is already the output of deeper black holes, their calculations unfurling reality frame by frame. It's a wild thought, but you've earned a few wild thoughts by now. If simulations exist, perhaps black holes are their processors, and falling into one is like peeling back the curtain to peek at the hardware. Joke 3. It means you're less an explorer and more a lost cursor blinking on somebody's cosmic spreadsheet. Quirky tidbit. The holographic principle implies that our familiar three-dimensional world might be a projection of two-dimensional data, like a cosmic VR headset we can't take off. Inside the black hole, the principle whispers louder. Perhaps the whole interior you're walking through is just an emergent illusion, a story generated by the surface code. You're not strolling down a real corridor at all. You're navigating a piece of software that insists it's stone and shadow. Historians will continue to squabble about whether to take such metaphors seriously. Are we genuinely discovering the architecture of reality, or just dressing our ignorance in clever tech lingo? The debate has as many camps as the noodle jokes you've told yourself along the way. But here, in this place where equations go shy, metaphors feel as solid as walls. You lean on them, because what else is there to lean on? You smile softly at the thought. Maybe black holes don't just end stories, they process them. Maybe your steps are being added to a calculation too vast to glimpse, each motion another tick in a line of code. The darkness feels less like an end and more like a server room, humming faintly, running a program that no one has the clearance to read. The corridor doesn't argue. It carries you forward, deeper, into a place where even speculation seems to pixelate, where reality feels like it's waiting for its next command. You keep walking, wondering if the next line of code has already been written, or if the black hole is writing you as you fall. The corridor tightens until corridor feels too generous, and your senses start doing interpretive dance. Lines that used to be straight begin to sway. Angles grow indecisive. Even the notion of left and right pauses to reconsider its life choices. You don't feel a crunch, just a drift into abstraction, as if the scenery has quietly updated its software and uninstalled your Euclidean plugin. The obvious truth is that no material, no bone or alloy or fantasy alloy, can endure the title script that's being written here. Survival is a word that belonged to earlier rooms. Yet the approach isn't loud. It's a smudging, edges soften, distances develop stage fright, and you listen for your heartbeat because it's the last metronome that still believes in rhythm. Patterns flicker on the inside of your eyelids, tessellations that almost settle then slide away, like M, C, Escher doodling in 0G. The geometry around you doesn't just curve, it oscillates, then over-oscillates, like a tightrope walker who keeps correcting until the corrections become the act. Quirky tidbit. Some collapse models predict a mixmaster approach to the singularity, Kastner epochs that stutter and swap, directions taking turns being stretched and squashed in a chaotic dance. The name sounds like a kitchen appliance. The feeling is more like an orchestra tuning forever and never landing on the downbeat. Your mind gropes for landmarks and finds rules instead. Light cones lean so hard they're practically on their sides. A step forward becomes empty ceremony. Forward has quietly rebranded as inward and later, and the map agrees. Historians still argue whether the early mixmaster universe idea really foresaw the fine-grained chaos of collapse or whether later numerical work deserves the credit. The footnotes have strong opinions, but the room you're in doesn't take polls. It only tightens. Blue shift ghosts gather from behind. The dribbles of radiation you left at the horizon and farther out get focused and hardened by the fall, like a lens that keeps honing the same ray until it's more intention than light. In some rotating interiors, the math warns of mass inflation near an inner horizon, energy densities ballooning, storms of old photons arriving together as if time had bundled their tickets. You can't see the storm, but the corridor carries the rumor of pressure, a hush with weight. Joke 1. If your GPS could talk here, it would say recalculating, and then file for early retirement. You touch your watch out of habit, not because you expect help, but because habits are bridges back to rooms where you had options. The seconds behave. They always have. Local physics remains polite even while global geometry drafts a will. You smile at the callback. Remember your noodle self? The stretching you joked about has matured into something subtler. Not the cartoon elongation of pasta, but the rearranging of directions into a menu with fewer courses. You don't get torn. You get edited. Ahead, though ahead has lost most of its vowels, the air, imagined, the feel grows grainy, like the universe is saving your level with aggressive compression. The hologram notion returns. Maybe all of this interior is a rendering, a faithful fiction spun from data on the horizon. If so, the rendering budget is running low. Colors desaturate, textures repeat. The corridor reuses assets like a game rushing to its final boss. Joke 2. You keep looking for a glowing weak spot where you're supposed to aim. The universe declines to provide one. You try to remember a sky. An ordinary patch of midnight over a city. The smell of warm dust and cut grass. A plane sliding across like a patient insect. The memory arrives, then shivers, then lands in your hands as a smooth, symbolic pebble. Simpler than it was, but strangely heavier. Compression again, long moments becoming icons. It is not loss exactly, more like curation. A museum label where once there was a room full of furniture. A rhythm sets in, squeeze, pause, rotate, squeeze, pause, rotate. The mixmaster. Rumor seems less like speculation and more like choreography that never learned how to end. You sway with it until swaying feels like standing. Occasionally a direction gets promoted. This axis stretches, that axis folds, and then the cast rotates and the understudy takes the lead. You can't help thinking of earlier jokes. The noodle, the sauce, the landlord black hole posting rules for the neighborhood. Even here, the callbacks tether you to you. Beyond this, words go thin. You feel a pressure to surrender adjectives, to trade description for counting. One breath, another, a third. Counting works until it doesn't. Eventually numbers want spacing, and spacing is exactly what's on budget cuts. The corridor has compressed into a seam you wear more than walk. The seam narrows with the confidence of a zipper sliding shut. You wonder, briefly, whether the singularity is a point or a ring for a spinner, whether it's a location or a verdict. Your curiosity remains sturdy even as noun's desert. If it's a ring, could there be a hole in the middle through which math pretends you might pass? The earlier whispers said, perhaps, then, no, then the question is wrong. You accept all three answers like polite candies from different ants. You can love a question without insisting on dessert. A last survey. Body, present, abstracted. Breath, present, shallower. Humor, present, bless it. You try one more. Joke 3. This is the part of the ride where the safety brochure says read the full terms and conditions, and you admit you clicked I agree 8 rooms ago. The terms were always brief, forward only. You sign again with a nod. There is a gentle mercy in the way detail fades. Fear needs room to pace. The seam offers none. Anxiety likes horizons to fret about. Here, horizons have the courtesy to be everywhere at once. Your shoulders drop because there's nowhere for them to climb. The universe has tuned you to the same pitch it tuned the room, and resonance feels, unexpectedly, like calm. One more quirky filigree before the nouns retire. In some equations, the exponents that describe directional stretching, the Kastner numbers, must add to 1 and square to 1, a riddle wearing arithmetic. You don't solve it, you hum it. The math is lullaby now, structure without story, scaffolding you can lean against without needing to climb. Historians still argue whether lingers as a phrase you've carried across rooms, whether Einstein foresaw any of this texture, whether naming singularity helped or haunted the century that followed, whether our metaphors have guided discovery or distracted it. The arguments will continue without you. That continuity feels tender. Debate is a kind of heartbeat too. The seam thins further. Your watch, faithful liar, ticks again. You glance not to read the time, but to savor the idea that ticks still come in pairs. The blue shift hush presses, then loosens, then returns like a tide that forgot how to leave. Your steps, if they can still be called steps, are now syllables. You speak them softly, so the room can hear. And in that softness, acceptance arrives, not the melodramatic kind, not banners and vows, just the practical acceptance of a traveler who has reached the final switchback and sees that the path becomes one line. You think of the frozen image you left to outside eyes. You think of the disk's asymmetric glow, the jet's searchlights, the noodle joke that refused to die, the landlord in the galactic lobby, the patient breath of Hawking's fate. You let them all stand behind you like a friendly crowd, then you let them go. The last thing to remain is the oldest thing, attention. It narrows until it's a bead, a drop, a grain, and then even until is an extravagance. There is only the approach, smooth as glass, inevitable as punctuation, generous as sleep. What waits on the other side is not your concern. Your concern is this final clarity. You have learned how to walk without asking for doors. The seam you've been following has thinned to almost nothing, and yet you keep walking, or what feels like walking, though each step is more symbolic than physical. Ahead, there's no room for scenery, no stage props, no set design. Just the anticipation of a vanishing point where geometry, physics, and narrative all lose their license to continue. The obvious truth is that nobody, scientist, poet, or traveler, knows what happens at the singularity. Equations collapse into infinities, metaphors stall, and imagination becomes both your compass and your consolation. You try to picture it. Maybe it's a dot, infinitely small and dense, where every atom you ever carried and every story you ever told is compressed into a line too brief for language. Or maybe it's a ring, like in the equations for spinning black holes, a loop where space folds back on itself in shapes you can't grasp. Quirky tidbit. Some researchers propose that instead of a point, the singularity is smeared out into a Planck-scale fuzz, a quantum blur that refuses to accept absolute collapse. Joke 1. It's cosmic pixelation. You've reached the part of reality rendered in 8-bit. Speculation multiplies the closer you get. Maybe the singularity bounces, creating a new universe on the other side, a fresh Big Bang hidden inside the folds of this one. Maybe your fall is not destruction but delivery, your atoms recycled as the opening verse of a different cosmos. Historians still argue whether this is genuine possibility or just the physics equivalent of doodling in the margins, but the dream persists. A child universe seeded by every singularity, branching realities like cosmic coral reefs. You glance around one last time. There's nothing to see. No disk, no jets, no wormholes, no arguments. Just the silence of inevitability. And yet you smile, remembering the callbacks. The noodle joke that stretched your fear into laughter, the frozen image of yourself stuck at the horizon, the X-ray whispers that painted the edges in invisible light. All of them, in their way, have followed you here, tiny companions on the strangest walk anyone could take. The obvious truth settles like a warm blanket. You cannot carry fear into a place this final. Fear needs a future to exist, and here, the future is too narrow to host it. You feel lighter, not because gravity has lessened, it hasn't, but because acceptance weighs nothing. Joke 2. Maybe black holes are just cosmic Marie Kondos, tidying up cluttered universes by folding everything neatly into nothing. And then comes the softest realization of all. Endings are not always noisy. Sometimes they arrive like sleep, like the hush after a song fades, like the final page of a book that doesn't need an epilogue. You step forward, into the vanishing point, into geometry's last breath. For you, there is no after. But for the universe, perhaps your story has been written in faint photons, encoded in radiation, whispered in speculation. Either way, you dissolve into the calm. Joke 3, whispered to yourself. Well, at least I didn't lose my keys. The singularity takes you, not as violence, but as punctuation. A period at the end of the longest sentence you ever walked. And then, silence. And now, as the story fades, so too does the urgency in your chest. The corridors, the sparks, the debates, they all soften into distance, like echoes carried away by sleep. You are no longer walking. You are floating, as if the last step dissolved into an exhale you didn't realize you were holding. The black hole, once a looming monster, now feels like a lullaby written in gravity's hand. Breathe slower. Notice how the edges of things blur. The walls, the sky, even your own thoughts, all melting into one continuous dusk. The singularity is not looming here. It has already been folded away, leaving only quiet. Let yourself imagine you're drifting in a calm tide, each wave smoothing over the sharp corners of your mind. There is no hurry, no destination, only the gentle rhythm of now. Time, which once sprinted and fractured, now stretches long and soft, like a blanket pulled to your chin. Every worry, every unanswered question, every paradox that once nagged at you, all of them drift beyond reach. They no longer need solving. They simply dissolve into stillness. The universe, it turns out, is kind enough to let you rest. So as your eyes grow heavier, imagine that the darkness around you is not emptiness but comfort, a space that holds you, without demand or expectation, allowing you to loosen your grip on the day. The black hole's final secret isn't destruction, it's peace. A peace that seeps in slowly, wrapping around your shoulders like a familiar coat. Rest now. The stars will still be there when you wake, patient and watchful. For tonight, let the cosmos hum softly in the background while you drift into dreams.